Hello, everybody. Today we are showing entries from the May Art Dare, and we are also announcing the July Art Dare. If you would like to grow as an artist and you can't take an art class, we've got everything you need here at Art Prof: critiques, tutorials, professional development, and workshops. The May Art Dare was to make a 2D or 3D artwork that is created entirely from direct observation. And we gave this prompt because not a lot of people draw from life. Have you seen that to be the case, Kat, in your experience?
I agree. Not a lot of people draw from life. It seems like everybody is drawing from someone else's interpretation nowadays, whether that's a photo from Pinterest or maybe some interesting image they saw on Instagram. It has a lot to do with the internet, how accessible those images are, but that is not how you see the world.
And so it was really fun to see the range of subjects that people were drawing their brush on their dresser. And so I just loved seeing also the subject matter. So the first artist we're going to talk about is Lisa, who, by the way, is here live with us in the chat. And so Lisa says, I decided to draw every day. The most rewarding pieces were 4 portraits. But Lisa also drew a napping chemo patient, my art teacher, and 2 selfies. So we've got a great array of people. And I love, Lisa, that you included this reference so we could see what you were doing. And Kat, this is not the typical selfie.
Yeah, this is really like, what are you wearing on your head?
Construction hat.
Okay. Seems a little big. Wonder where you got that from.
Well, Lisa used to do stuff on site.
Oh,
So this
cool.
is actually part of Lisa's background professionally.
That makes for a very cool self-portrait. Tells us more about yourself.
So here, I believe, is the napping chemo patient, although correct me if I'm wrong. And we also have the self-portraits. And Kat, what strikes me is that stylistically, these are so different from each other.
My guess is actually this one might be the art teacher. I think we saw the napping chemo patient earlier with the foreshortened head.
Oh.
That might
Oh,
be it.
okay. So Lisa says that first got could snore. That is fantastic. Okay, so maybe this is the art teacher. And Lisa also confirms, yes, my old hard hat. See, that's the thing about life is you start adding things that are right there. In some ways that tells a story in a way that nothing else can. And so that's one thing I really appreciate about these, Lisa, is that you found ways to put in the narrative. So even here, and Lisa, you can tell us this. I don't know if these are headphones or those noise canceling headphones, but even that gives this selfie so much self-portrait, so much personality.
Right.
And how about the pencil technique here, Kat?
I think what's really great about this pencil technique is that Lisa actually got very dark with graphite. I think for a lot of people, graphite is really hard to just get dark with simply because it's such a gray medium. And in order to get that dark, you have to press really hard and you have to be unafraid of the medium and pressing hard in order to get the darkest darks. And what I see here is that Lisa's unafraid and therefore reaps the benefits of having a whole range of value.
And it's a good balance because if we look at the headdress at the top and then the nostrils and the mouth, those are by far the darkest parts of the drawing. But then, oh my gosh, I love the really soft, subtle grays, like especially the one that's around the chin area. And that really feels soft and fleshy. And so that's a really great contrast that you have going on in there. And Lisa also confirms headphones in my art space because it really does tell a story about who you are. Because I have access to Hugh Jackman all the time. He's right here on my desktop. And so that tells a story about me. So whatever narrative you want to tell, it really comes across in real life. Okay, so how about this one? What do you think of this?
Oh, that one's really cool. I really love the composition and the tilt of the head here. And here we finally see the hard hat makes another appearance. I think what's really wonderful about this piece too is, I mean, the graphite technique we've already talked about, which I think is phenomenal. I think is great, but also just the props in this self-portrait. Let's not discount glasses. I think glasses are a really great prop that people often forget to draw in their character designs or artwork or portraits of other people. Glasses, the headphones, that's very particular with like the neck Bluetooth piece, I think. The hard hat, even down to the hairstyle. This is a very specific portrait of someone, and it almost tells a story through objects as well as face.
I also love that the name is backwards. That's such a nice touch on the hat and also the tilt, because I think for a lot of us, doing a self portrait, you're sort of limited physically by what you can do in terms of observation and also posing at the same time. And here, it's not hyper dramatic, but just that slight tilt to the right, I think gives the self portrait a very natural feeling. It doesn't look very posed or stiff, which I think is quite typical. So Rowan Beth says, I like that angle. Artie Strings, very cool composition. And George says, really like the realism of the image. Okay, the next artist we're going to look at is Nita. And Nita talks about building confidence in my skills of perception, get outside of my comfort zone, because, Nita explains, I usually draw using photos as a reference. So, wow, Nita did so many things. We have a still life, plein air painting, and first life drawing class, trying to see if drawing from life rather than a photo would communicate more of the spirit or energy of the subject. What do you think of this plein air piece?
Ooh, this one is the first piece we've seen so far of just really deep depth. This is a good plein air painting depicting space. And what I really love about this painting is that we do see foreground, middle ground, background, but we also see some attention to how to occupy the space with like living creatures, like the birds, the trees, the water.
I love the sway of the trees. They almost feel like a wave that's moving to the upper right hand corner. And
Mm.
actually, I think when you draw from observation, and especially on site, one thing that happens is we don't tend to get super detailed because of time. Usually not there for 15 hours. And so, usually, I know for me in my own planar work, it doesn't get resolved the way a studio piece would be resolved. But my feeling is that Nita captured that moment where she
Mm.
saw this way of the trees, those couple birds up there. And so just capturing that to me is more important than a super detailed plein air painting.
Mm.
And we also have this lamp, pencil sketch. We also have skull and a horse, and also life drawing for the first time. And life drawing is hard. It's so much harder than drawing from a photo of a figure.
I agree. I think with life drawing, a lot of the times it's literally just, as Jordan McCracken Foster would put it, pencil mileage. Literally, you just need to spend the time and the effort to just draw a lot of figure drawings in order to get a good sense of how to draw it. And of course, eventually you start to incorporate things like anatomical correctness, structure, proportion. But really, the way to do it is through experience. You need the time.
I mean, this is your first time, Nina. You did fantastic with these drawings. I especially like this one in the lower right hand corner because of the shading in the torso. I think that looks very volumetric, but also I know it's a model posing, but this one really feels like it's somebody sort of looking out into space. And so it doesn't look like, okay, model posing in a classroom. And that doesn't always happen. It depends on what the model's doing and how you decide to do it. But I always think it's really nice when you can feel that personality in the figure drawing. Like, especially this one at the bottom. This person's so chill. We also have George says, very wide range of subjects and styles. And Lisa says, sweet moment captured in time, referring to the plein air piece. And we also have this page. What do you think of this? These seem a little bit longer. These are 10 minutes.
I think it's really good that Nita is actively doing different time periods for the figure drawing series, because it's true, being able to draw something in 2 minutes is a very different skill set from drawing something in 10 minutes. I do think that given the 10 minutes, I love the top left one in terms of its shading. We're starting to see like the deltoid, the rib cage. We're starting to see thigh muscles. I think that's really wonderful. I also love how Nita also included the chair.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times when figure drawing, people forget to draw the props that the model is interacting with. And I think that's such a mistake, because depending on how you interact with the prop, with the object, your body changes dramatically. So it's wonderfully, I think, sophisticated that Nita included the stool. Most people would omit something like that.
Oh, it's everything when it comes to showing the physical weight of the figure. And even this one, we can feel the stretching of that thigh that has this tension that happens. Whereas you look at the figure up here and the legs are beautifully drawn and they also look very relaxed. So Nita, you're doing a really excellent job of distinguishing tension versus a form which is very passive. We also have a still life painting. What do you think of this?
Such range. Not only are we seeing graphite drawings, but we're also seeing paintings, but also the subject matter, which I think that Lisa H had mentioned before. Was it Lisa H? Yes. The range of subjects that you have pulled up earlier. I totally agree. I think that Nita is practicing how to see with different mediums as well.
It's so different when your objects aren't moving compared to a figure drawing. And so that's, I think, really great, Nita, that you had 3 very different types of experiences drawing and painting from life. Because here in a studio, you can work as long as you want. You can set up the still life. So compared to the plein air, it's a very controlled situation. And so this is a really good contrast against working with the model where you have no control over what the model is going to do. And what I'm seeing, Nita, that you're starting to really latch onto in all these pieces is the lighting. I mean, aren't these cast shadows just so beautiful?
Really wonderful. And also Nita really captured the reflected light in the porcelain or ceramic as well.
So nice work. Okay, next person is Kat's Glitterbox, who I believe is live with us here in the chat. Welcome. And so Kat's talks about wanted to do a still life that wasn't a bowl of fruit on a table, so I hung a banana from my doorknob. What do you think of this?
I think that's so fantastic. I think a lot of people give still lifes a lot of flack for being boring, but it's only as boring as you make it. A still life can be incredibly engaging, such as this. Like, what sort of object even is that? So what kind of person would own an object like that?
Katz, you have to tell us, is this a plush? Because he looks soft, and I'm just curious what the object is, if it's just a doll or if it's something else. But also, such a cool move to have it hang from a doorknob, because that's just a totally different sense of space. Typically, bowl of fruit sitting on a table, and it feels very static. But here you have the tension of the beads. You also have the shadow that's at the bottom, cast shadow over here as well. And so it's a very atypical still life just in the arrangement of it, and also the objects as well. Okay, so Kat says, yes, he's a plush. Carolyn says, love art that has a sense of humor. And Kat says, I won him in a crate game.
That makes sense. Yeah, it would. I would be interested. What kind of person would just go out and buy this? Like, pick the I want that one and spend like $5 to $10 on it. But winning it from a crane game makes a lot of sense to me.
That's fantastic. And so Katz also did these two drawings of the wood mannequin. I think we're all familiar with the wood mannequin in these art supply stores. How about these? I think this one is in charcoal. Maybe Katz, you can confirm that. And this one looks like a pencil drawing.
Hmm. I mean, what I'm really loving from the collection of Katz's images is the range of textures that we do get a sense of. For instance, the banana plush earlier, you had said on your own, Clara, it was a plush, not a plastic, dinky little thing. It's soft. It seems soft. The form of it feels soft. But when we see the wood mannequin, it's very clearly wood. And I think that has everything to do with how the light and shadow is interacting with the materiality of this object.
And it's cool to see the comparison between how the charcoal drawing looks versus the pencil drawing. Because in the pencil drawing, I think this is just the material. It's a lot neater in terms of how you're doing the shading. In the other one, it's a little bit more textured, but you also have a lot of really rich darks. And so to me, this one looks a little bit more dramatic, whereas this one really feels like it's about the form, like really showing the volume of the individual pieces of wood. I think the joints are really well articulated. And so this one seems like it's much more about the structure, whereas this one feels more like a scene in a way, like especially the lighting on the top of the head, I think definitely does that. Okay, so Katz is confirming, okay, this is charcoal. And the second one is pencil. And I love this comment from Rowan, who says, it gives a sense of a person's experience of the world. Like this person has a banana thing hanging from their doorknob. And I bet you look at that every time you leave your room. That's exactly what I was saying earlier, that the choice of subject, people say, oh, well, that's so limiting. I want to be able to draw whatever I want. But you know this from your antique graphic novel, Kat, that objects have stories.
Objects have so many stories. There's so many objects out there. You can literally choose anything in the world to draw. What I love about going into an antique shop and the objects there is that you just can never predict what's going to be there. Like you could find a banana plushie with a pink bow and blue beads. Like I wouldn't have that in my household. I had to go out and actively search for something like that.
And Kat says, thank you, everyone. I'm glad my picture made you smile. Well, thank you, Katz, for your wonderful work. Okay, so the next artist is Clea. And so Clea did a selection of urban sketches and life drawings and says, I've been experimenting with different colored sketchbooks, collages, mixed media, quick pastel drawings. Okay, so a wide range of different media. We also have this one, and we have this life drawing and more life drawing sketches, and coming back to this piece as well. So what do you think about this range of pieces?
I think that Clea has a very good eye for color and is very unafraid of using color in a very unexpected way. For instance, when we see the this piece, I'm pretty sure that those buildings aren't actually orange or yellow, but Clea has taken the initiative to make it that way just for the sake of creating a cool piece or maybe experiment and grow as an artist in terms of color. I also think that Clea has utilized so many great elements of art, especially in the landscape drawing with the blue purple background, because I think a lot of the times people overuse a media and they want to just like cover the whole paper with all of it all the time. And people don't really understand the power of holding back or being able to intentionally deploy the medium in a specific way. And here Clea has only used the medium really to highlight the light surfaces of the building or to highlight the form or silhouette of other things in the background.
Well, I think Clea really got the color of the paper to participate in the composition. And that doesn't happen so much when you have a white sheet of paper. And you can see here as well what she's really doing successfully, which is using the yellow color of the paper as the building. But because she drew so much blue around it, that accentuates the shape of the buildings even more. And the collage of the orange, I think, is brilliant. I think it really pops beautifully. And this life drawing, it's very touching to me. I think it has a very soft, very relaxed gesture in the person. How about these?
These are really wonderful. And we also see a change of medium here. We see marker, which must mean that Clea had drawn it with marker when seeing the model and perhaps went in later to color it in. At least that feels like the process to me. I mean, what I'm really impressed by with these two figures particularly is the overlapping of the body parts. Like on the left, we see a figure that is very foreshortened. And on the right, we actually see this one detail where the model's feet are crossed over one another. And it's actually this overlapping and foreshortening of body parts that makes a figure feel more organic.
Nina says, I love the white lines in the first ones with the pastels and the blue, gives it so much character. And Lisa says, these would be terrific stage backdrops because of those bold shapes. Recently, I just have been talking to a lot of people about shape, that it's an element of art that is fairly easy to understand, say, compared to something like space, which I think is very challenging. It's not tangible. But I also think shape is underused for a lot of artists, that we get really tied up in all the lines and the details and everything. But I mean, this bold white shape, I mean, that pops so well against that composition, and it works beautifully in this context. We have some prizes to give out. The honorable mention goes to Lisa. Congratulations on these wonderful portraits. And the prize goes to Clea. So congratulations, everybody. I love seeing your participation. As you know, it's all about building our community and watching each other grow. Let's talk about the July Art Dare, which is Fantastical Botanicals, because I just went on this botanical garden tour. Basically, Hawaii is one gigantic, fantastical garden botanical place. So I've been thinking about these. And so we're going to ask you to invent your own fantasy botanical species. And Kat, you and I love plants. I know you got a whole wall of beautiful plants. And so where do you see the potential here?
Nature is just incredible. You go out into the world, and actually, when one travels the world, one of the first things that you may notice is how different the botany is from country to country. Some countries might have a particular tree that you see everywhere. Other countries might have beautiful flowers that bloom a certain way or is unique to that area. And so when you draw nature, you're literally just drawing the world around you, and your world is just ripe with so much imagination and fantasy.
Or maybe your plant's going to eat you and everybody else in the movie. Tell us in the chat, how many of you guys saw this movie and what was your reaction? Because I saw this movie as a young kid, and that puppet, especially the inside of the mouth, is so gross and visceral. And I was just thinking, today that plant would have been done with CG, but it was so amazing as a puppet, and it was so startling. I mean, especially these scenes at the end where he's like pulling people into his mouth. So botanicals can be very funny in that way. And Kat, tell us how you did this.
Wow, this was years ago by now, Clara. I actually don't completely remember the process for this one, but I do remember it was a fantasy landscape painting prompt. And I think I had really small dried plants as a reference. Like maybe they were dried up flowers or something like that. And I just took that small dried up flower and blew it up and made it into a tree instead. I think that's what happened.
And the trunks are chicken feet. I remember you
Oh my gosh. You're right. You're right. I see it now. Thanks, Clara, for reminding me of something I did.
So while you guys can use images of plants, that doesn't mean you always have to do that. I mean, these trunks were initially chicken feet, and I think also scale. That the plant you drew, the dried up one, was so tiny, and you made it this monumental plant. So I think that's another way for you guys to think about this. And how about this one, where the plants are, they could be real, but this is an invented scene.
Right, I remember this painting more clearly, but this was basically visual development for a story I had. It was set in a tropical jungle area. So I just looked up a lot of references of jungle botany, plants and trees. And it's a fantastical landscape, so it wasn't supposed to be very realistic. But I did receive a critique of this landscape, which is there weren't a lot of living beings in this place that seemed rife with living beings. I mean, if you have a landscape full of these lush greens and grass and trees and everything hanging from the branches, then where are the bugs? Where are the birds? Where are the monkeys? So when you guys create fantastical plant matter, it's also important to look at the world around the plants and see how does it grow? What are the things that interact with this? What are perhaps the fantastical creatures that live among these fantastical plants?
So this is not a part of the art dare, but if you guys take a look at the people in the scene, look at how gigantic that tree becomes. And so sometimes having that scale reference can be very helpful, whether it's a person or an animal. Those are two really good ways to go about doing it. So we have some questions, and there was one earlier from, Nina, who says, do you not show all the entries? That's right. We only have certain amount of time in the live streams to do that. And it also depends on the number of entries. I mean, sometimes we get a lot, other times we just get a few. So yeah, in general, we try to show different artists as well. So we have some people who will do the art dare every month, but we don't want to show them every month because we want to leave space for people who have never been featured before. Carolyn says, so mushrooms as fairy houses would be too cliche, right? Well, what do you think about that, Kat?
It's only as cliche as you make it. If you think of the first thing off the top of your head, it's very likely that other people would also think about that off the top of their head. But for instance, if you make a fairy house that's made out of I'm trying to remember the name of this mushroom, veiled ladies mushroom, that's such a specific mushroom. I don't think a lot of people would know about that mushroom. And you make a fairy house out of that, I don't think that's cliche anymore. It's because it's very specific. And I only know what a veiled lady is because I ate it once and it tasted really bad. It tasted, okay, I'm going to be honest. Veiled ladies taste like what I imagine old skin off of people would taste like. It just tastes really bad, in my opinion.
Oh my God, that sounds absolutely terrifying. Well, so here's my take on the mushroom fairy house. If I was doing it, it would be like mushroom fairy house gone wrong. It would be like a half rotting mushroom with very upset fairies. So you can do it. We're not saying don't do something which some people perceive as cliche, as long as you're aware of that and you do your own take. That's totally fine. We also have recently, as you guys can see, I found this amazing cactus garden with these giant barrel cactuses. And this was in Honolulu. And I was like, oh my God, I love big, round, plump forms. So this is like my dream landscape. And so I was actually thinking about the cactuses as walking up a hill. I mean, very clumsily, but that's another way is to almost personify some of the botanicals that you're seeing. And honestly, I feel like some of them have hairdos, like this one at the bottom. This one has like a really big wig. And so there are different ways you can insert personalities. Here they are. They're gigantic. And if you guys want to take a look, I did release a 10-minute video that shows the entire process. And Kat, sometimes I think that nature is just so bizarre. I mean, I saw things at these botanical gardens and I was like, what? Like, who would think a tree looks like this?
I think earlier in a very old art prof video that featured the teaching artist Julie Ben Bassett.
Yeah.
I think she said something like, nature is the ultimate character designer or something like that. Or nature is the ultimate creature designer. I think she said it on a video, but I would totally agree. You just never know what would pop out of the earth. And you think, I can't believe I live on a planet that makes something as beautiful as this or grotesque as that or has such intense shape language everywhere.
So I released a short about this cannonball tree, which, first of all, it's so big. I mean, I've never seen a tree like this before. But doesn't this just look like somebody just like got random things from Michael's and just like threw it together into this mess? Like, how does this thing exist on the planet?
That's crazy. I wish I could see that. Wait, how big were they? Like cannonball sized spheres on
Yeah,
that tree?
they were like big.
Wow. Do you eat them?
No, they smell terrible
Oh,
because
okay.
when I was there were a whole bunch on the ground, but some of them were cracked open, but they smell like skunks.
Hmm.
And then pitcher plants, I mean, these had like fur on them. And so definitely look at some of these plants and get inspiration because some of them are just so weird. Like I remember walking around the botanical garden and half the time I was like, what? Like just so shocked by all these different shapes and forms. All right, so we also have the Art Dare Leap. This is not required. Sometimes I know people like to tackle something that's a little more substantial. So we're going to ask you to invent 4 different species of botanicals.
Hmm.
And we now offer 3 ways to submit to the Art Dare officially. Just choose one. Don't do all 3 because that will get very confusing. So the first one, and this is new, we are allowing people now to submit in the Discord. So just go into the Art Dares channel, just tag me, tell me it's your official submission, and that'll be fine. If you are not on social media, we also have a Google form, and you will find that on our website. You can also tag us on Instagram, but you have to tag us. Don't just use the hashtag because Instagram changed this thing about the search function, which is super annoying. So you got to tag us to make sure that we see that. And we have so much fun seeing the entries. I mean, especially lately, I feel like there's just been a giant party in the art dares. And Kat, I think that's such a big part of the art dare is just watching other people do the same thing.
I agree. There's a lot of camaraderie in overcoming sort of a challenge together. And the challenge here is the art dare.
And seeing what other people do throughout the month, I think is really helpful. You see somebody's early idea, you see some sketches, you see the final piece. I think we follow each other's progress and we learn a lot in that way. So here's the Google form. And if you want to find the Art Dare page, just go to Learn and Create on the main menu bar and find the Art Dare page. If you scroll down, you will then find the link to the Google form or tag us on Instagram. We do have an Art Prof Share today. The Art Prof Share is the digital basics track, and it is by Tarius, who is a self-taught artist and also wants to shift into a freelance situation and found it very helpful to do it through Ibis Paint. And wow, doing these tracks is a ton of work. It's 6 different lessons, and they all exercise a different facet of the process. So, what do you think about these facial expressions?
I think these are so fun. They're incredibly expressive. And what I really love about these facial expressions specifically is that literally the shape of the head will change sometimes with the facial expressions. People often forget that. Think of the head as sort of this static canvas and have the face change. But really, with facial expression comes the face. I'm sorry, the head that has to change as well. Specifically, bottom left. Really fun grimace.
Also, this is part of the track. So, if you guys look up here, the beginning of the design was an Ajax bottle. And so you take the contour of the Ajax bottle. And if you guys look at the character, you can see the Ajax bottle. I mean, of course, Tarkarius added more than that, but that's part of the track, is that we give you that amount of structure. And texture cubes, great lesson for trying out a range of surfaces. I really like the green one. It's so like blobby. And then the spiky one at the top is such a good contrast. And so this one is to create a digital painting inspired by an oil refinery. I have lots of photos of that in the collection. What do you think of this?
Ooh, I think what's really great about this piece that is more highlighted than the other pieces is light and shadow. I think Tarius is just great at line work. I mean, we kind of see that evidently in the texture cubes, which honestly, I haven't seen many versions of the texture cube assignment in a cartoonized form, and Tarius totally blew it out of the water. Like, it totally shows texture through the power of line. But in the oil refinery painting, I think what's wonderful here is that Tarius is utilizing line still, but incorporating shapes of light and dark and color and value. And so this is getting very sophisticated. This is incorporating many elements of art now.
We also have fantasy landscape, which is related very much to the art there. We have this like mass of a hedgehog, I think. And actually, one of my favorite parts is all the polka dots that are at the top and bottom. I think those really match the style of all the lines. I love how the clouds are this sort of odd shape. You know, a lot of times we expect a cloud to look more like this, and this is just a very unexpected shape for something like that. And then lesson 6 is to create a composition that has at least 5 fish.
I was not expecting that. When you popped it up on the screen, I was like, wow.
I love these little guys. They look like their mouths are like stuffed with food. And then these fish are so evil. So great work, Tarius. We're so proud of you for all the work that you did on the track. Oh, we also get thumbnails. I didn't see these before. I love thumbnails.
These are fun. These are great. These are very refined thumbnails, actually. I mean, I think that you could take any of these thumbnails and take them to finish.
So Karasu says the fish picture reminds me of Pokemon. Rowan says very consistent style across all of Query's work. It's a strong artistic voice. And Lisa says the hedgehog made me snort out loud. Yes, fantastic. We have one spot left in this Saturday's workshop, Drawing Pets and Animals. And the marker workshop has a few spots left. You want to get in your registration as soon as you can. This is a 2-week experience where we have a 3-hour live session and you get written support and feedback the week before and the week after the live session. So I encourage you guys to sign up. It's a small group scenario, and I love teaching the workshop and helping all of you progress with your goals. Join us in the Discord right after the stream. Kat and I will be in the post live streams channel, so come hang out with us there. ArtProf has services, artist calls, portfolio critique, statement editing, and visit artprof.org. We have so much content on there, which is not on YouTube. Whatever you're looking for, just type it into the search bar. Thank you to our wonderful top Patreon supporters who keep the lights on here at ArtProf. We cannot do any of this without your support. ArtProf has a podcast. It's available on Spotify and also on iTunes. And Maggie would like for you to subscribe for more tutorials, critiques, and business tips. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.